welcome to the Impact Show. This is Lim Durden, your host, and we have Jeremy Milton here, and we have a special guest. Thank you again for being back. This is my first time hosting this show, and so I appreciate it if you can bear with me today. We have a very special guest today, Dr. Virgil Cole, and
Please call me Virgil.
Virgil, absolutely.
More comfortable.
Welcome, Virgil. And Jeremy, thank you again for allowing me to host this show.
I love it. I'm excited. I don't even know Dr. Virgil, so I'm just sitting in. Lynn, you just take off and do your thing, and I'm anxiously. I can't wait just to hear who he is and what he does and what his impact is like.
Absolutely. Well, I know a lot of people would like to know more about your story, and this is what this show's about. You know, it's really about hearing people's stories, focusing on leadership stories and how we can get better and how we can create a legacy for the next generation. Well, you have a great name in this community and a great legacy. And I know you have a lot of great stories, and I've heard them, a few of them. But so would love to kind of get to know you. So can you tell us just a little bit about who you are and maybe what you've done the last couple decades, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. I'm honored to be here and appreciate you. You're going to do great. And thank you for being here. Special guest makes me feel pretty honored. So I'm not sure if I fit that bill, but I'll try. I grew up not too far from Madison in Conyers, Georgia, most of my life. We moved quite a bit as a kid, kind of in the eastern Atlanta area, and ended up in Conyers. My childhood was probably like a lot of kids back then. I mean, I participated in a lot of different athletic kind of events. For me, it went from football to basketball to baseball, and just kind of restarted that every year, and really enjoyed that.
Back when they let you play more than one sport.
Yeah, this specialization stuff now is a little bit different, but I do think it served me pretty well that I got to do a lot of different things like that. So, very proud of that. And just was pretty good in athletics. Nothing too extraordinary. I was a little taller than most at my age, probably as I grew up. One thing that kind of shaped my childhood a little bit is I'd mentioned about moving around. A lot of that was because my father was in different kind of jobs. So while we came across probably as a pretty middle-class family, there was a lot of financial chaos in my life, probably at that young age, which was kind of stressful. But athletics were my salvation, sort of, as I went through and grew up. And I grew to be 6'6". You can't tell me sitting here.
Right. And he is a bulldog, by the way, Jeremy. I don't know if you knew that. I played for Georgia.
But
nice.
But was, again, involved in stuff, a lot of athletics. I got to be decent. But, I didn't think I was anything special, honestly. I don't know that I was always like the best on my team in that kind of regard in a lot of ways. But I worked really hard, I think, at it. I remember in middle school, I had grown so fast. I think I got to be like 6'3" or 4" by the time I was in 8th grade, which is kind of crazy. But I looked like, I was just skinny. Just bones. I had grown so fast, just so skinny. And one of my, so I had some really difficult knee issues, one of my knees. And it turned out it was a kind of a growing disorder, if you will, and you grow out of it. It's called Osgood-Schlatters. And my doctor at the time said, you need to take off of any athletics at all. So my 8th grade year, I remember I had to just stay on the sidelines, and I had been pretty involved in middle school sports up until that point. But so that year was really tough for me, just sitting there. And it real quickly, my friends forgot that I even played sports. It was like, and I just kind of felt left out. But it really did inspire me. So when I came back in 9th grade, I hit the ground running, and was pretty good at. I was not to brag on myself. I hate to do that, but MVP of football team, MVP of the basketball team in my 9th grade year. So I kind of set that ball and rolling a little bit on the athletic course. I had a friend that told me, goes, I don't know if you realize it, but you could get a scholarship someday. And I'm like, there is no way I'm going to get a scholarship in anything. But I mentioned the financial difficulties of my family. But I did have a couple of people that played in front of me in high school that I saw get a college scholarship. And, academics were real important to my mom, especially my family. Nobody had graduated from college on either side of my family. So it kind of went off in my head, like, well, maybe, if I work hard, it might be an opportunity for me, because I knew we probably couldn't afford it to go. And so luckily, and just very blessed that I got better and better. And, by the time I became a junior and senior, I was pretty highly recruited. I don't know what the 5-star, 4-star. That really wasn't around. I was a blue chipper, probably is what they would have called it back then. Had a lot of coaches coming to my high school, and whether it's Vince Dooley for Georgia, Bill Curry, or Danny Ford at Clemson, or Alabama coach and stuff like that. And so it was a pretty cool experience. Much different today. This is before NIL and all the fun things I get to do now. But I did get the chance. And in football, I played a lot of different ones. Love basketball, but football was really being 6'6", 260, and could move a little bit. Probably wasn't a bad thing. And ended up, University of Georgia.
And who coached the team when you
It
played?
was Coach Dooley, and I had an autograph from him from middle school, and I'd kept it on my board, and so it's kind of cool that I got to play for him.
Well, I'm sure people would love to know what would be the one word that you would describe Vince Dooley,
Wow.
if that's possible.
One word. That's probably 2 words that come to my mind.
Okay.
Hard-nosed in a lot of ways. Just, one kind of fun story, if I can go on a little tangent here. I remember, and this is going to sound worse than it really is, but I got in a little skirmish in practice one time, and my helmet got jerked around, and somehow it broke my nose, and I had to get surgery and all that good stuff. And if you know Coach Dooley, some of you that are old enough, he had a pretty big nose, and it looked like he'd been, probably injured, and probably before football even had face masks, probably.
Right.
And I remember seeing him and says, "Well, now you look like a football player." So, but anyway, all that to say,
Did he say that like right after?
no, well, pretty quickly.
Right.
But while I was good in football, I had my moments. I had some pretty big injuries and reconstructive knee surgery and different things, but I probably excelled better academically, believe it or not, and was all SEC academically, not athletically.
And what was your position?
And defensive line, and I played a little bit on offensive tackle later on. But really enjoyed that experience. It's very hard, when it's definitely a different experience at that level, and definitely a business. And at that time, my major was like pre-law criminal justice, and I was going to be a federal agent or something like that at some point. And so when I graduated from college, I wasn't going to NFL or anything like that. So I went to work at the local police department, Conyers Police Department, believe it or not.
Wow.
And to get some experience, because I knew that was kind of a step probably in that direction of going to where I wanted to go. And it wasn't really necessarily my aspiration to be a local, a police officer or anything, but it was certainly a life-changing experience to me in so many ways, just dealing with people from all walks of life. And just learning how to deal with people was really a great experience for me.
I have to ask,
Sure.
when was that?
This was, I went to the police academy in late 91, so it would have been 92 to 97, 1990. I get that
Okay.
there.
My granddad was a police officer there, but it would have probably been before that.
What department was it?
It was the City of Conyers Police
Wow.
Department. Charlie Underwood.
I know the name.
Yeah.
He passed away right when within a year. And it kind of goes into my retirement thing because I think he hadn't been retired too long when he passed away. I remember being at his funeral.
That was my granddaddy.
So wow, small world.
That is funny.
It's always amazing how
Pretty
that is.
cool.
And so I did the general patrol, part for a couple of years, and there was an opening, and we had a DARE unit, which was a big deal in Rockdale County at the time. And I really thought that was really a great thing because we were trying to get into the schools and talk to students before they got down that road, because I saw very readily all the time that people kind of got down that road of not making good decisions. It's kind of hard to get off of that road.
Right.
And so I thought it would be cool if I could try to stop that. And so luckily I got in that program, and I was teaching at several elementary schools and even a middle school in Rockdale County. And so it's basically about talking about the dangers of drugs, of course, and peer pressure and that kind of thing. And, it really enjoyed that to the point where I'm like, I might have missed my calling going into education. And so, believe it or not, through law enforcement, I found a path kind of might want to go to education. So I went back and got a teaching certification because I already had a degree. And I got high school certified, and I wanted to coach because I had an athletic background, and I taught in Salem High School in Rockdale County. And unbelievable experience. I mean, just being able to be around the students and the kids, and I really enjoyed that time.
What all did you coach?
Believe it or not, defensive line again. And we weren't that good on the football field, but we had a great, it was just great being around the kids. We'd have a big cookout at my house there every year, and just enjoyed that. I wasn't the head coach. I was an assistant coach. But going to school at the same time, I kind of got an inkling because of what I'd done in law enforcement. When I was in law enforcement, besides teaching DARE, I was doing Believe it or not, executive protection, which I could tell you a story about that maybe, which we mentioned.
Yeah, go ahead and tell us.
Another a side story. So when you're teaching DARE, you're not, it's not like a full-time, all the time thing as a police officer. So I was, of course, being 6'6", I'm probably a good shield. And so I got picked to be in the executive protection. So I got some training on that, and I worked, believe it or not, with Scotland Yard. And when Princess Anne came to the United States and helped protect her, this is pre-Olympics, and that was all building up to that point. I got to help with Juan Antonio Samaranch, which was the head of the whole IOC, and so cool experiences in the Olympics, doing some protection. Also did some a lot of stuff around policies at our department, because I have the background with computers and stuff like that, which was kind of a new thing at that time, believe it or not.
Nice.
And so when I got into teaching and coaching, I knew pretty quickly I might want to become an administrator. Back then, you could just get your master's degree in anything. And I'm probably taking forever taking this story in my bio. And anyway, I went back and got my certification in educational leadership and a specialist, and started, my principal at the time was great. He was my high school principal, Bob Cresswell, who went to Salem High School. Who
I remember.
been yours too. And so he gave me an opportunity to kind of help when I had planning to go help with the assistant principals, which was, again, another outstanding experience for me. And then one of the nearby counties from Rockdale was Henry County, which was exploding with people at that time. And I got to be, I got a position in 2000 as assistant principal in Henry County. And within a few years, I believe it or not, I was a principal, which was interesting. Some of the teachers that I worked with as a DARE officer, police officer, I hired them as a teacher, which is pretty crazy how that worked out. And so I was a principal for several years, went to human resources, assistant superintendent, became a superintendent in Glenn County first, which was way down the coast. We thought it'd be really cool to be in St. Simons and Glenn. And we had some folks down there we knew. That was great. My parents were still in Conyers when I became a superintendent in Morgan. My dad started going through some health issues. And so it became important. My wife had lost her mother in this time as well, who lived in Athens. So family was kind of blaring at us that we needed to probably get a little bit closer.
Right.
And so we made the crazy leap of faith. I didn't renew my contract, a 3-year contract in Glenn. And I'm like, we're going to Morgan because I love this area. I had been to Madison before. It was close enough to Conyers, and my wife was from Athens, and I just loved Morgan. And so I had made that decision. This is pre-COVID, within months. And so, but I just had faith, which was kind of crazy because I'd always been very, strict about my strategically doing things. And so we had put our house for sale, and COVID hit. I'm like, I'm not going to have a job. I don't know what I'm going to do. Morgan had an opening within about 3 or 4 weeks after I announced my retirement or my leaving Glenn County, and I applied and got that during COVID.
Nice.
And just retired from Morgan County this past year. So that's kind of a long-winded stuff that, just life has been great and a lot of great opportunities, but a lot of things have shaped me along that way.
Well, that's awesome. Thinking about the things that have shaped you the most in life, and you've had some good career choices that you made throughout your life. Let's back up and say, okay, what's the one thing during your early years that really made the difference in your life and the direction? Because honestly, kids can go in a totally different direction from your parents and based on who the kids they live around, but you've really made an amazing life for yourself. And I know you made another amazing impact on so many kids in the community. Can you nail down maybe one or a couple of things that?
I guess it's so hard to do that sometimes, but I mean, I mentioned athletics. I think what you learn through athletics is very important. Obviously, the teamwork, working hard toward a goal, striving for something bigger than yourself. I think those are all important. They gave me really some good guardrails. I had a really good family in a lot of ways, that were around me. My grandfather, who I'm named after, his name was Virgil Cole, of course. He grew up in the Depression, and he had to quit school in the 3rd grade. He lived in Decatur and worked at a dairy, starting probably at 8, 9 years old. And so his whole entire life he had 13 brothers and sisters, which is very common at that generation, have very big families. And he had to quit school to take care of his family. And it caused him to be illiterate. He couldn't read. But despite that, he worked for 40, 50 years. I don't even know exactly. I think it was Mathis Dairy. I remember him wearing overalls and just going to the dairy and just working so hard. Had a garden at his house. He was a deacon of our church. I mean, if you could just, I wish he was around to speak to. Just an unbelievable man and just a role model. And so just watching him as he persevered, I think was very important for me. Interesting enough, my mom, who was a special ed parapro in Rockdale County Schools, she took a course to kind of teach reading. She wasn't a teacher by trade. So I remember her sitting at a dining room table in my small grandparents' house, trying to teach my grandfather to read, phonics and stuff. He was like 80-something years old. So here he was, 80 years old, still trying to read. I remember going to his house a lot, and he would be listening. He couldn't read, of course, so he would listen to the Bible on tape. And so he would just listen over and over. I mean, nobody knew it better than he did. But the fact that I could, 2 generations later, from a grandfather who couldn't read, become a superintendent, shows you the power that is of education and stuff like that. So athletics, my grandfather, I had some great friends that, I didn't have peers. I think this is important for kids now as well. But I think just I had great friends that did not put pressure on me to do things that I didn't want to do, or things that, just were good positive role models as well. So, and just people along the way, as I mentioned, a friend who mentioned about me getting a scholarship, but that said, or a coach or a teacher that just had that right impact on me, that said the right thing, because sometimes you don't have faith in yourself. You don't have that belief in yourself. So sometimes people believe in you more than you do at that time, and that really made a big difference.
Right. That's cool. Well, we have something in common. Your grandfather, my father actually stopped school in the 3rd grade because they thought he was going to die that year. Because back then they called it a hole in the heart is what they called it. But he had a heart condition that they said that he was going to die. So they wanted to let, just give him a chance to be with his family, mom and dad, and just to come out of school and never went back. Well, he was a barber for 51 years. He survived. And, it's funny he used to say this, I didn't cut hair for 50 years and not learn anything. You can learn a lot of things through people, relationships, and not necessarily have an education, but he was self-learned. And but when you're talking about education, what would be kind of the one thing in education that people need to know about? For teachers, it's thinking about teaching or principals, superintendents. What would be like a good rule of thumb or a suggestion on what to think about when going into that field?
It's not easy. I think that's first and foremost. I think to be, a great teacher, you have to really enjoy having relationships with people and being probably a role model to those students. And I think if you enjoy those things, understanding it's going to be hard. I know people talk about summers off and all those different things. I didn't get that many off, frankly, but I know for teachers, and my wife is in education as well, it's not that much time when you consider all the stuff in the school and have to do. And a lot of them work over summers and different things and coaching and stuff like that.
And before and after class.
Exactly. So, I know when I coached and taught for a few years, I was busy the whole summer, either going to school or, helping with something with around athletics.
So it's definitely tough.
It can be very tough, but it's so rewarding too.
Right.
I tell the story to new teachers sometimes. I heard this famous psychologist, he called it, and I hate to use this big word, but it's headwinds, tailwinds, asymmetry. So they aren't equal. So he would say it's very human nature to, when you notice the headwinds,
Mm-hmm.
like I used to do more, but I like to run or jog. And so if you're going against the wind, all you can think about the entire time is the wind in your face. You're like, oh my God, I can't get through this. It's just really can be tough when you're going against a really strong wind. But the minute you turn around, you notice the wind for like 5 seconds and then you forget it, because we notice the headwinds and that's true of everything in life. We always are noticing how difficult things are, or how things are stacked against us or whatever. But it's easy to forget all the things behind you that are pushing you and helping you along, whether it's your community or your family. And so for new teachers, I would just say that you're going to feel like it's all headwinds, but there's a lot of things behind you in the community and people in your family that can make it, and you make such a huge difference. And so, and seeing that impact as you go through your career is just really cool experience.
Right. I think you're right that it's so easy not to recognize the difference that you're making from day to day.
Yeah.
But we have to know and believe that we're making a difference. and not to give up, not to lose faith, and to recognize one day we will be rewarded for all the efforts.
Right.
So, good word.
Thank you.
Jeremy?
I have a lot to say, but
Go for it.
I yield back. One of the questions I would have for you while I'm sitting here listening to you tell your story, surely there was mentors along the way that led you to, because I heard, here's the thing, in my mind, you started one direction and you went a whole nother separate direction. And so tell me, along the way, were there people that helped you? Obviously, there were people that helped you get there. Tell me about them and what kind of role they played in your life.
I mentioned some friends or different teachers that probably gave me a lot of encouragement. When I got to teach there and I was in all different elementary school every day, pretty much, I was around a lot of teachers and administrators and just hanging out with them. And so, just talking to them and seeing the impact they were making into the people. I got to hang out with some really cool administrators. So I saw some probably that I really admired in some ways and some I thought that weren't doing such a good job. And so from an early pretty stage in my, if you want to call it educational career, I saw kind of the those type of administrators I wanted to be like, or maybe, so it kind of inspired me to make that kind of change. Because I saw what the ability they had to have such a huge responsibility over that school and that community and how they were so admired. And that really, I thought that was really a neat thing.
So you pursued the influence that you've seen.
Right. I saw that they could, I can think of a few, Mr. Biddy, which was,
I remember him too, yeah.
And he was a great principal, and I just loved being with him and talking to him. And again, he probably believed in me more than I did myself, but he encouraged me to go back and get my teaching certification and stuff like that. So, but I saw what Mr. Biddy or Mr. Cresswell, other principals,
I like that.
the community impact they had, and I thought that would be really awesome.
So you've seen impact, and they impacted you,
Right.
And then you pursued that.
Yes.
And then, in addition, they walked alongside of you and encouraged you to do so. How important is it to encourage other people?
I think it's so important. I mentioned about how we don't sometimes believe in ourselves until, first of all, it's somebody else. But I can just think of 2 or 3 comments of whether it's a teacher. I remember writing, believe it or not, a poem in 7th grade, and a teacher reading it to the class. I didn't even think of myself as that good of a student, but I'm like, she's like, this is out. I mean, she just went on, and I'm like, wow, that must have been pretty good. I didn't think it was that good. So even her or a coach, or again, I can't sound repetitive, but these just what you might think are just the most, she would never think it was that big a deal. My friend telling me, hey, if you work really hard, you might get a scholarship. He didn't even, I remember I saw him recently. He's like, I don't even remember saying that to you. He didn't even think it was that big a deal.
Crazy.
It's so crazy that these things, so I'm always trying to be the one, and when I was, especially when I was in the previous positions, to send notes to people or a text or a comment, because I didn't know what I might say that might be that one thing they need. And it usually, when they happened in my life, they were like some of the lowest points in my life, the lowest points in my life. When I think, in my opinion, God was working through them. And so,
wow, it's so good to hear you say that. I was reading a book. I was telling Lim earlier, I've been reading a book by Benny Tate, and it's called Yes, You Can. My mother gave it to me just a few weeks back. And the chapter that I literally just read it last night. It's about encouraging people. And he was telling me, he was telling his readers, that in his book, he was saying that just little small nuggets of encouragement stick with you for life. And he's in his, I guess Benny Tate's in his 60s, maybe something like that. But his 7th grade teacher had encouraged him. And that kind of stuff sticks with you for your whole life. You never forget it. And depending on where you're at in your season of life, encouraging people. And so it's so important that we encourage others.
I think it's the most important thing we can do, really.
Wow.
There's a big thing I know when I was in different communities, kindness matters. And the thing, just these acts of kindness to me are so important, because you don't know. And more recently with me, it's just you don't know what other people are going through. It's hard. Life's hard. We all go through our trials and tribulations, as they say. And so those are the moments when somebody might need it the most.
Wow. That's good stuff.
I agree.
Yeah.
At Chick-fil-A, we have this video that we train with, and it gives you an opportunity. No words are used, and people are walking around and bubbles will pop up over their head.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And it will state what they're going through if they just lost a mother or they just graduated or whatever. And so it gives our team members an opportunity to recognize that everybody's going through something, and encouragement is so important.
Absolutely.
And that, especially as an educator, a leader, that we need to understand how powerful both our words are and our encouragements are. And that if we're more intentional, and I think this could be a great message for everybody to remember today, the more intentional, both hearing, picking up things that can make a change in our life or a new trajectory, or either, being able to give that information to people. I remember one time I was working so hard in the restaurant business. It can be grueling sometimes because the customers in front of you, they want to get served, and they want to get served in about a minute and a half. and of course, you're working with 16, 18-year-olds. And I remember I was working really hard in front of the store, helping my managers out. And I remember this just retired operator came up to me. He said, "Lynn, let me talk to you real quick." I said, "Sure." He said, "It's going to all be worth it one day." And so he obviously saw something there that, hey, I was struggling, I was working hard. And I'll never forget that, because it is true. It will all be worth it. And more importantly, it's going to be worth it to all those people that you helped and all the seeds that you planted, and how important to be intentional about planting seeds and also listening well and being able to receive what wise people are telling us.
Absolutely.
I have another question.
Sure.
Tell me about a time where in your life, well, first of all, let me back up. Superintendent, right? And for how many years?
8 years.
8 years. That is a pretty influential position, right? In a county. And you don't just wake up one day and say, I want to be a superintendent. But how did you become good at being a superintendent?
Well, I don't want to be the one to judge if I was good or not.
Well, if you won for 8 years, you did a pretty good job.
I can verify. He was like the very
had
good one.
a positive impact for sure. I think if you're observant, and just watching people, and again, which is interesting because of my law enforcement, I think just dealing with people, it's a very cliche thing, the golden rule thing, but I always felt like, how did I want my boss to treat me? How did I want, and as I went further up the chain, I guess, I had more and more influence and impact on people probably. But the power you have is actually, in my opinion, it kind of becomes oxymoronic. It's less, because you're really more, I'm not directing people from a day-to-day like a principal or assistant principal. I'm just kind of in the background, more trying to be supportive of them. And I love the saying, I heard from another superintendent. He says, there's those that teach and there's those that support teachers. Okay. And I wasn't teaching at a lot of my career. I was behind the scenes supporting teachers. That's really what it's all about. And so I think that was just kind of my philosophy, kind of going through it, is being a servant to other people. I enjoyed that. I can't tell you how many doors I opened in my career, in different capacities. And I'm not saying that because I'm so much any better than anybody. What was funny, story maybe, or when I was a police officer, especially, or even as a first year teacher, I'm like, gosh, if somebody's a principal, they must be unbelievably just a person and just great or whatever, or if they're a superintendent. But each time I got to that role, I look around and go, well, we're all just like whoever, whatever position, teacher or custodian, it didn't matter. And so, I think being humble as much as you can, and I think if you do it for the right reasons to help other people and not for your own ego or for whatever, I think those can be important things to make you more impactful in that. One thing, I kind of had these core beliefs that I sort of fell upon as I went through, and I could probably recite most of them right now, but I think communication is super important in anything that you do. Relationships, I think that is, everything. Teamwork, being visible, 5-star service, high expectations. I don't go to all, but it may have a couple more, but I think those are kind of things I've just kind of landed upon and tried to hone over and over. And I think the biggest thing, and I learned this early on, even as an athlete, I hope I did this. I wanted to be a positive role model.
Mm.
I wanted people to look up to me and go, well, I could do that if I, and I'm not perfect. I've fallen short many, many times, but I hope I try to lead a life, especially in the public and even privately, where people could aspire to, that would be something to aspire to be. And so, that's something I've always worked hard. So whether it's an athlete, a dare officer, a teacher, police, all the way up to being a superintendent, I try to exemplify what I was talking about. If I'm talking about teamwork, well, gosh, I better, use that in my daily workings as a leader. If I'm talking about being visible, well, my gosh, I better be visible. So whatever it might have been, I tried to embody that in everything that I did and everything that I said. Of course, what you do is more important, but that's just kind of maybe to answer your question as best I can.
So your leadership style would be what?
I'd say servant leadership.
Servant.
I'm serving. That's what I love to do. I like, and if I could lead you in that way, and I maybe suggest the right thing or make it your idea in somehow, some way. I think that I was effective in that way. And that was the cool part. There was a lot of difficult things about being a leader. A lot. You've probably heard Kirby Smart talk about the impact of leadership and you don't really realize how hard that is, and you're kind of just flying solo. I mean, you get to be superintendent. There's not a lot of people around you that, not that they aren't there to support, but you're kind of I hate to say it, but you're a peer of one in that regard. And confiding in everybody is kind of hard to do. But just through your work, and I think by what you do, and serving other people, you can maybe have a better impact on other people in a positive way, hopefully.
So we know as experienced leaders that there's a lot more failures than there's successes on the way up. We're failing all the time, and what would be, if you had to think back, is there like a major setback in your career, whether it was a mental thing or actual setback, that you could talk with the young leaders that's coming up, young educators, that, hey, be aware of this. You're going to have setbacks, and if there's an example or story.
That's a good question.
It's a hard one, maybe. Yes, I've fallen a lot. There's been positions I wanted, I thought I wanted so bad that I would have been so perfect for, that I didn't get. And I was really disappointed about that. But then I would look back and I'd be like, oh my gosh, thank you, God. It was a blessing, and it wasn't the right door, and that's hard for people when you don't get something, to be so disappointed in something, and it feels like it's personal, but it may not have been the right fit, and you don't know that. You do not know that. And I would say that's one early interesting thing. I remember my first year principal, and I made some elaborate schedule I worked on all summer. I was so proud of it, and I'm presenting it to the teachers at our first day, and a couple of them came up to me and like, that's just not going to work, and I was like, oh my gosh, I had really worked really hard on this. And so I went back and I'm like, I'm going to try to help this little group out and fix it somehow, or whatever I did. And I represented it out. And then I had like double, triple that number going, I like what you had done. And I'm like, oh man. So I think one thing I had to learn is, not that you don't remain flexible and don't change based on what you might learn, but also learn sometimes you make the right decision for the right reasons, and you have to stick with it. Sometimes by being wishy-washy, you might lose the respect. You might, by pleasing or trying to please others, I guess, you can potentially lose the respect of everybody. So have a core. I will say one thing about leadership that will do is it will test your core principles day in and day out. And if you don't know what those are, you're just going to fall apart. So stick to those core principles. You're going to make, I know I made people mad. I probably hurt people. I hate to do that, because I like to please people, but I felt like I always tried to make the right decisions when I could for the right reasons. And then I could live with it. I heard earlier ministers say, if you can lay your head on the pillow every night because you did everything right, then that's pretty good. Most part, I would say I did that, but again, I'm sure I failed in many ways as well.
There's a lot of weight to what you just said. People don't realize that you do have to go to sleep at night, every night, with the decisions that you make every day. And if you don't make the right decisions, those things will haunt you for the rest of your life. And so,
and in certain roles I've had, I mean, I had the weight of a family on me, though, like, because I'm deciding whether they have a job or not. That's a pretty weighty responsibility, to have. So and for me, I was 34 or 5 when I became a principal. So, that was, it could be a lot of responsibility. And the one thing I would say to anybody in leadership too is, it's not, I know people look at, well, you just sit back there in your office. I was trying not to do that. I was trying to get out of my office, but I get the sentiment sometimes, but the sense of responsibility that's on you is never ending. It's all year, all day, every day. And that is the weight that you have to get used to.
It's a cross to carry is what it is. 100%. And I admire you for doing it as long as you did. A lot of people don't really even understand the education. I believe, and Mickey Edwards came on our show a while back. You should go back and listen to her episode. She did a great job. But she was a magnificent leader. And is, I shouldn't say was, is. But I when she was teaching, because I had never even thought about the education world, but it's like a whole nother life.
Like every career, every profession, I'm sure Chick-fil-A's got its world.
Yeah.
You've got your world.
It's its own world.
And we all work in it. And I wouldn't say it's a bubble, but I will say in education, it affects so many, your child, your children.
Well, that's what
else?
When Maddie and I were on the show, and I was like,
Bigger deal.
I didn't even realize, but like the kids, the parents, the teachers, a principal of a school has a tremendous responsibility and influence on the community at large. And you even more being the superintendent. And I mean, it's a humongous responsibility and a burden.
I don't ever want to put myself on a pedestal because I was a superintendent or principal, whatever. The people that are serving, whatever they're doing, whether they're cleaning a room or serving food. My grandmother was I talked about my grandfather. My grandmother, his wife was a food nutrition worker. My dad drove a bus toward the end when he kind of retired. So I have a big heart for those folks that are kind of doing more of the behind the scenes stuff like that. In fact, when I was a superintendent, I would take a day or two, a lot of summers, and spend it with one of the custodians, or we had a mail delivery person in Glen, and I would just show. I'd be like, I wear what they wore. I'd go out there because you can easily forget. And I remember a principal I worked for. He said he took a day or two in the summer to help clean the school, and I thought, well, that's really cool that you did that. And so I try to keep that mentality as I went up. So, I think principals or teachers or any of these folks deserve all of our respect. I had a grandmother, just said, as long as you do something honorable, she thought it was a great job. And I'm like, all those people do honorable jobs and it works. So.
Amen. That's awesome.
I hear to be a superintendent, to be grounded, to be good with relationships. And I kind of heard this, that learn how to conquer yourself in the sense of, not letting people get to you, in the sense of taking it personally is kind of what I heard, right? So how to not take it personally.
Easier said than
takes maturity. What's that?
Easier said than done.
Yes. Not taking it personally is, I would imagine, to me, that's like serving others and not yourself. And it's learning to stop worrying about yourself and really care for others. And not only are you dealing with your teachers, but the parents of those children they're teaching. And that you get to hear it from all different sides. I would love to have been in your office one time with one of those conversations and how you handled. Can you tell us an experience?
I'll give you a long story that kind of relates to this. Okay. One of my philosophies was to get people to say thank you. Okay. And I didn't do it for long, but I did give a few tickets out in my day as a police officer. And so when I would address or deal with someone from the public, my goal in the back of my head was to get them to say thank you. Now, I knew that was probably not going to happen, but I think because I went through it with that mentality and such respect and I'm sorry, not sorry, but, I think the way you deal with the person was differently if you had that kind of mindset. Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, I did have someone say thank you once or twice, even despite getting a ticket from me. And so transition into education. And I had some very difficult conversation with a lot of different types of people. In my back of my mind, I'm trying to think, I want them to lead this conversation, maybe not liking what I say or even, agreeing with me, but they would say thank you. They would respect it at least. And so I would say that would be, some of the difficult conversations that I had with people it didn't always work out. And some people, it just doesn't work, but it's just something I always has a philosophy to work. And so I try to teach that or parlay that message to even other administrators and say, just go with the right mentality of that. And I think a lot of times it works better than you think.
I have to dig into that a little bit more.
Okay.
When you say that you're giving maybe it is a difficult conversation. Okay. So everybody sitting here has to have difficult conversations, right? We do those. Everybody does all the time. And when you have to approach that, how in the world do you approach it trying to get a thank you out of somebody?
I don't know. It's not easy. I had somebody, one of my classes, I remember it stuck with me as a psychology class. He said, don't ever let anybody know where your goats are.
Goats.
Your goats. Like somebody got my goat. So I work really hard not to let people know that something bothered me or that, I might have had the most difficult conversation on the phone with a parent or in person, but when they saw me next time, I was like, how are you doing, Miss whatever, or Mr.? And I don't know. To me, it was just the right thing to do in this job. And, because I'm a parent too. I've had moments when I didn't agree with the teachers my kids might have had. I didn't say anything usually because of my job, but, I think, you don't know what somebody's going through. Sometimes the most difficult situations, they may take it out on on us as an unfortunate school system or server at Chick-fil-A or whatever, and just not taking things personal. And I've had people send me some really crazy emails or difficult, and then they follow up, go, I'm sorry, I did that because I responded, because one thing I did learn, and again, a lot of things go back to police work, but you can either de-escalate or escalate things based on the way you act to a situation.
But how you respond.
By how you respond. So I saw police officers sometimes, somebody would get a little bit, difficult, and they would ratchet it up really quickly. Or I saw teachers with a student that would be dealing with somebody and the kid would be a little mouthy or whatever, and they'd be up to 10 and automatically I'm like, just take it down. So again, some of those experiences I had early on really made an impression on me about those kind of things. And seeing people, this is a little bit of a side story, but I remember I got a call, somebody's called 911, go to the house. It's a difficult area in Conyers. And I showed up and got there. It was a pretty old, elderly lady. And she said, my air conditioner's not working. Like, okay. Now, it would have been pretty easy for me to go, look, I'm the police. You need to call whatever, the HVAC person to fix that. But I didn't, because I said, let me look at it. And so I remember she had the setting wrong or something that helped her. But again, I'm not better than anybody, but in that situation, I just try to put myself without my grandmother or my mother, in that situation. And so, I think the way you respond to things can make a big difference to her maybe and to others.
Responding in grace.
I love
That's what I heard.
That's great. We need more care in this world. And no matter what your position is, you can show that care.
Absolutely.
If we can teach 16-year-olds at a restaurant to do that on a busy, stressful day, then I think we have no excuse for us to do it. So say it's 20, 30 years from now and you have lots of grandkids. Do you have grandkids?
I do not have any yet.
Okay. Are you aspiring for grandchildren?
None are close. So if my kids ever see this, I think I got a little while.
What would you like to tell them? What would be something that, hey, if you do this right in life, you're going to go far?
I think hard work is a big part of what I would preach, and I have preached to my own children. I think, it's not always going to work out the way you want to. Life's not necessarily fair. It's something you learn. But I do think having goals that are worthy, that means something to you, that move you, and then working toward it, even if it's just one little step a day, I found that works. Whether it was when I was working toward maybe hopefully a scholarship for football, just doing something little each day, or becoming a principal or a superintendent, just doing something little each day that I thought would make me a little bit better. Putting yourself in uncomfortable positions. It's easy to do things that's one thing I probably learned as I've grown as a leader is I have some probably decent strengths, but I have some pretty decent weaknesses as well, and recognizing those and maybe trying to address those and work on those. And, and I think that would be what I would say to my kids. It's just work hard, do something that you have passion about. And I think you can go pretty far in life if you do those kind of things. It doesn't mean it will be easy, but I think you can look back and hopefully you will have made the impact that you want to as well.
I love it. Well, you are in a unique chapter in your life now. You're retired, right?
I am. I'm working part-time now, but a little different, obviously. I'm working with the Georgia School Superintendents Association.
Good.
Some leadership training and stuff like that. So that gives me the ability, hopefully, to help impact them in some ways in the future. But yes, it is a different phase of my life. And retirement's been different than I thought, for sure.
Right. How's that?
Well, I mean, one thing I have, not to get downer, but I've had a little bit of health issues, which were unexpected when I first retired. But things don't go always the way you plan it, but thankfully it's something that can be addressed and I'm working through. It's just a process. But super blessed. I hope I can still continue to make some positive impacts on people and be a role model. It's a different platform. I think I didn't do the superintendency or any of the jobs I've done before because it was the title or anything like that. I really don't find that much use in titles sometimes. But so I think this hasn't been like, oh my gosh, I'm not now a superintendent. I'm kind of enjoying a little bit of anonymity probably. But, I still have my children, hopefully, to influence, maybe future leaders of education. And in the community, we serve in the Rotary and volunteering and different things like that. I think continue to find that purpose, I think is kind of a challenge in retirement sometimes. And so it's been unique in that way. I think we think there's some pot of gold, like we're going to run through some finish line I ran the Peace Room. Right. That's not what it is. But it can be a meaningful part of your life, I think, if you make it. But I think being purposeful, but really life is, one thing I've learned is just the day to day, not 5 years, 10 years. Some of you that are younger, probably, I know when my grandfather, I'm like, man, it must be nice not to have to go in, but that's not what it's all about, So in finding every day that you get the chance to make a difference, no matter what stage of life you're at, I think is really important.
That's great.
I call it intentional living, right?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah,
being really intentional about what you do and what your purpose is, and continuing to pursue that no matter what you're doing, right? And so it doesn't, you don't want to let things identify you, right? And so if you're really intentional about living and giving back, that's what I heard you say. You're going to give back for the balance of your life.
Well, people did that to me.
Yeah.
I feel like and I mean, like, I think hopefully people listening to this and others, I want to make the positive impact and leave the world better, or the place that I work or community better than when I found it.
Right. Amen.
And so, again, everybody's going through this life and trying their best, hopefully. And I think all of us are here to kind of help support people on that journey and make it, better for all of them.
That's great. I remember a good friend of mine who retired. He was much older than me, but he worked for a great organization, but he was a leader in his organization for a very long time. And I remember him telling me, I don't want to do anything. I don't want any responsibilities. It kind of blew my mind. It's like, how can you not want any responsibilities? That's kind of what we work for our life. And he's doing very well, by the way. He's living on the lake and enjoying life. But I think that more so than doing nothing or retiring to this way of life, it's just really easy. I think, like Jeremy said, we need structure, we need purpose still. It's just a different chapter. We may have been under the Impact umbrella for a while and another company for a while, but in actuality, we have our own umbrella, and that, we can easily associate ourselves with a company, but more importantly, we can make an impact everywhere we go with every word we speak.
That's right.
And that is a beautiful thing. And sometimes it is okay to take a pause in between chapters. And it sounds like that's what you're doing. But something tells me you're gonna have a pretty busy schedule pretty soon.
I hope so.
I think I know you too well. But anyway, Jeremy?
I mean, the only last question I would say is, we talk about good stories. Is there one last, you told a lot of stories, but is there anything you left off? Because I know we're coming up on an hour, and Lynn may land the plane in a minute. Don't let him do it without telling a good story that you may want to share.
I can tell you a funny story. How about that?
That's perfect.
One of the things I talk about, and because safety is a bigger deal, about being complacent about stuff, and I think we all can be complacent when things are going a certain way. When I was a police officer, and you have a lot of good stories when you're in law enforcement, and I have some in education too. But I remember we had gotten a call. There was a lady on a second story or third story of an apartment complex where I was serving. She was brandishing a knife. Okay, so she was holding a knife as people and kind of shaking it at them as they walk by. And so I arrive at this scene, and the sergeant, Sergeant Dunn, if you're listening, I think he's still around. Sergeant Dunn showed up there to help support me on this call. And so we went up and confronted this lady, and we talked to her for a minute or two, and she wasn't going to give up the knife. And without talking to me, the sergeant says, you go high, I go low, 3, 2, 1. And I'm like, I know I'm tall and I get the high part, but I'm like, all right. So we were able to kind of, get her down and get the knife and all that. But this was not the most luxurious thing, but I had to go because obviously she was under some mental stuff going on and mental health issues. So I had the low rank thing to take her to the hospital while she got evaluated. And I'm not knocking people because I feel for them that are going through those kind of situations. So I'm in the emergency room. I guess the doctor talking to her or whatever. And one of the nurses comes with, Officer Cole, were you watching that lady that was over there? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, she just walked out the back door of the hospital. And I'm like, oh my God. And so I took off running out the door, and I wasn't going to call out the Sergeant Dunn or anybody because I would have been too embarrassed. So thank God I could still see her. I used some of my former athleticism to catch her, bring her back to the hospital. Interesting enough, about a week later, I was patrolling and I saw her out again. So we have to do more for people like that, I think. But and that was a long time ago. But that was I have some more funny stories about that kind of stuff. But you learn a lot through stuff like that about just being complacent about things and letting your guard down, probably. But not sure.
So, of all the law enforcement stuff, have you not ever thought about volunteering your time with the local sheriff?
I think I even talked to the sheriff at one point. Unfortunately, my health stuff, I kind of not. But I wouldn't mind doing that. I think it would be kind of cool. I was joking with my wife today. I was like, what if I became an SRO now? And they're like, former. And she's like, I don't know. I mean, I think I could pull that off. I'm help with especially the younger kids. That would be kind of cool.
Well, Sheriff Hooks did an interview just a few weeks back on the show.
Yeah.
And
but that, I have so much respect for what those guys and women go through. Talk about servant leaders and stuff like that. It's such a difficult career. It's only gotten harder, just like education with cameras and media and social media. It's just so hard. So I think anytime we can pay respect to those folks, we should. So,
well, I admire your leadership and all the things that the nuggets of wisdom that you shared today will be around, hopefully, for decades to come, and people will be able to learn from what you just said. And so your legacy is hopefully going to be much bigger than the Impact Show, but the Impact Show will definitely help with that. So I'm grateful that you came.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And thank you for all the work that you've done throughout your career. And, we're not going to realize all the things that God gave us opportunity to do in this lifetime. But I just want to thank you. Thank you for being part of Morgan County and helping us lead into the next chapter of this city. And anyway, so thank you, Jeremy, Maddie, for allowing me to be part of this. And
did a good job for your first one, man.
Thank you.
Great job for your first one. We'll give you a round of applause.
Hopefully I get better.
Yeah, no, you did great.
It is, I mean, honestly, all these things look easy until you actually stand there.
Thank you.
I've seen this with other roles. I've seen people, oh, yeah, and then they get it.
Right. Big mistake, huh?
Good job.
Thank you.
No, I like I said, there's going to be a lot learned from today, and lots of people can listen in and learn from the things that you said. And they'll become better because of it. So continue to be intentional about your legacy. And Liam, thank you so much for leaving.
Thank you.
So
thank you, Virgil.
Absolutely.
all right, signing off. Thank y'all.